I have to introduce him or you wouldn't know who he is. I hope you'll excuse me for not standing on the podium. I'm really good at getting up there, but getting down I tend to fall and hurt things. It's been about 3 months since I fell on that one over there, and a nail scratched a big hunk of flesh on my arm. So I'd like not to do that again. Our speaker today is Tim Beatty. That's Beatty, not Beatty. He said in the Marines they called him Beatty for so many years and so many times he thought his name had changed, but when he got out, he's where he is now. You have the bulletin today that tells you about him, and I don't need to add a lot to it because he didn't want me to say much. He said, in my church, they don't give long introductions. So with that, let's see. Anything else I should say about you, Tim? He brought his wonderful wife, Peggy, with him, and they're down from Idaho, southern Idaho, on vacation. They like San Antonio, they like Texas. I've been showing them around some of the historic scenes and sites and places to eat. And I think that's what he likes the most. Anyway, Tim Beatty, why don't you go up and talk to us? I've wondered about the Gideons for years. I've known them, I've been impressed with them. I've never known what they do or how they do it. He's going to tell us. Go ahead, can you get up there?
Todd Keogh was a young youth pastor and a teacher. He lived in way down Southern California, and he was a good man, good Christian man. But he was in kind of a slump. Spiritual stagnation had set in, and he didn't know why. He had befriended a homeless man who he often saw downtown in his town, and he ran into this guy just before getting ready to take his family and move up north of the San Francisco Bay Area. This old guy had a couple of orange Bibles. He said he'd been at a Gideon event of some kind, and they gave him a Bible, and they gave him another one for some reason, so he wanted to give his extra Bible to Todd. And Todd took that Bible and thanked him, and not long after that, they did move up to San Francisco. But he was still in this slump. He didn't know where it came from. A friend of his who knew he loved to go running and jogging suggested he go to those East Bay Hills. Have you ever been to the San Francisco Bay Area? In the East Bay, there's these beautiful rolling hills with no buildings on them, and you can run up there and you can look at the view. So he started doing that, and it got to be a really wonderful part of his life. He took that orange Bible with him. He eventually found a bench somebody had left up there. He'd sit on that bench and study his Bible, and he put his name and phone number in it, and he underlined things and wrote in the margins notes that thoughts that came to mind when he was up there. And it was a real healing experience. He loved it. And then he took a job. He accepted a job up farther north and was about ready to move again. And he went up for one last run up in those hills, and to get his Bible and so forth. He got up there, found the bench, and there was a hole under the bench, and somebody had taken off with his little orange Bible, and he was really upset. He was upset for a long time. There wasn't much he could do about it, though. He went ahead and moved up north, and he'd kind of gotten past that slump anyway, so he sort of forgot about that Bible. 10 years later, he got a phone call, and I don't know the guy's name. Peggy and I heard this testimony in person, and I don't think he ever mentioned the guy's name. We'll call him Jack. Anyway, Jack called, and Todd answered the phone, and Jack said, "Is this Pastor Todd Keogh?" He said, "Yes." "I have your Bible." And he said, "What? How did you get my Bible?" And here's the story. Jack's dad was an inmate at Vacaville State Prison, And his cellmate had this orange Bible and was a Christian. Well, Jack's dad had never known anything about the Lord, and his cellmate brought him to a saving knowledge of Jesus using that little Bible. And then he got discharged and left the Bible with Jack's dad, who then started a Bible study in the prison, and hundreds of men through that came to know Jesus. And then he eventually got discharged from the prison, and came home. He gave Jack the Bible, and Jack read it and brought his whole family to Jesus. And at that point, after this amazing story, he said to Todd, "Would you like me to mail you your Bible back? I'd be glad to do that." And Todd thought for a second and said, "No, I don't think so. I think you should keep it." So he did. And 7 years later, he got a phone call, and the person at the other end said, "Is this Todd Keogh?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I have your Bible." And he was way down in Huntington Beach, California, nowhere near that where Jack lived. And they talked. Now, when he gave this testimony, he didn't say how that guy got the Bible, because what they were focused on was this guy had come to know something about the gospel message through that Bible, and he had all kinds of questions. So they talked for a long time, and Todd answers a lot of his doctrinal questions about Christianity. And at the end of that, Todd said something like, "It's a Gideon Bible. Do you know who the Gideons are? You know anything about them?" And this guy said, "You bet I do. I saw that name on the Bible, so I started asking around, and I found out who they are, and I got to know some of them. And guess what? I'm helping them give Bibles out at the local high school." We're a 120-year-old organization. We have a rich history. We've been in the ministry that long. We're in 200 countries, territories, and possessions. That means in those places we have Gideon organizations like the one I belong to. There are many others that don't have that, but we still go in and try to help them and give them Bibles. Our Bibles are printed in 108 different languages, but we have a Bible app for cell phones now that is, they keep adding translations to it. I think it's up to 1,300 languages now, and many of those you can listen to on your phone if you can't read. So they're really good in the third world countries. We're using a lot of those. I'm proud of the Gideons. Last year, in spite of the pandemic, we gave out 66 million Bibles and New Testaments. And I know statistics get boring, but I want one more statistic. Our lifetime placement since we started giving out Bibles in the early 1900s, we have given out 2,417,645,000 Bibles and New Testaments. We have, the United States is the hardest place to give Bibles because we go in other countries, third world countries especially, and we can go right into the schools. They'll bring all the kids down to the assembly room, or we go in the classrooms, and everybody gets a Bible. Everybody hears the message. Very few places in America can we do that now. We used to. I just found my little New Testament that I got in the 5th grade not too long ago. Still have it. That's kind of a thing of the past. One of the ways that we tried to compensate for that is we have what we call a life book. It's one of the gospel. We start with Matthew or John, I think, are the two that we have. Now, your church can order a box of these for free. they have notes in the margins all through this thing that were written by teenagers. And so it's designed to appeal to teenagers and give them a taste of the gospel message. And so your youth group can take those into the schools with them and give them to their friends. It's one of the ways that we get around how strict it's gotten with the Bibles. We've been doing this for 110 years. Hotel Bibles are probably the thing we're most well known for. We've been doing that for a long time. In 1908 is when we started doing that. And I'm going to give you just a brief version of the history of how that came about. Excuse me. I get really dry when I talk. In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, the Ministerial Association had regular meetings, and in 1908, Gideon's had been around long enough. They've been around about 10 years by then, and they had gone national. So there was a national headquarters and some officers at that level. Well, this Ministerial Association in Cedar Rapids reached out to them and asked if a couple of the guys from International Gideons could come to their Ministerial Association meeting and just, tell everybody what the Gideons were doing. And so a couple of these guys did. And they gave their talk, and then just before they sat down, they said, we have a new project in mind, and this is on our hearts that we're working really hard to figure out how we can do this, but we want to see Bibles in hotel rooms in every city in this country. And we're determined to figure out a way to do that. He sat down. Immediately, one of the pastors stood up, and he made this motion, that Gideon Bibles be placed in all local hotels and that the Pastors Association be responsible for the funds. And it passed unanimously, and immediately they set up a committee to figure out how to allocate the cost of these Bibles in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You see, we're an extension of your outreach ministry. Bible-believing churches like this one and the one Peggy and I belong to, and we can't all go out to Africa and South America and places where there's desperate need for the gospel message, but the Gideons can do it, and they are doing it. They've been doing it for a long time. And really, there's only three sources of revenue that we have. The biggest one is the members, Gideons and Auxiliary, and we take up offerings every time we meet. And then we have a Gideon card program, and if you get one of the bulletins that's in the foyer there, take it home with you. It's got a way to look those up, look up on the website, and you can order cards, and you'll see how that works. It's you give so many, you give money for so many copies of the Bible in honor of the person you send the card to, or in memory of somebody who's passed away. That and the church, our church ministry, those are the three sources of income we have. Now, I know, usually I encourage people to give donations. I know this church has been through a lot of really traumatic times, and that you've lost your pastor and you're in mourning, and you have a lot of expenses to fix the church. So I'm not here to ask for donations for Gideons. I just want, I love to tell people what we're doing and how it can work. And I do encourage you to take one of the bulletins that's in the foyer there. And that's it. Thank you very much. sorry?
Please remind us why we call it the Gideon. Where does the name come from, Gideon?
Oh.
Remind us what that means.
Well, it's from the Gideon in the book of Judges. He was a humble man. He was not a leader. He was not a great, powerful guy at all. He was kind of the last one you'd expect, and yet he was able to, because God gave him the power to lead the people, he was able to defeat a much more powerful enemy. And that really speaks to what the Gideons are all about. That we can't do anything on our own. Todd's Bible went all over the country because God sent it there. That's how God works. He doesn't make us powerful so we can do things. He gives us the power so he can do things through us. And that's what the Gideons do. That's what we're all about.